All right, hello everyone, and good evening. So welcome to Women Empowered Fashions from the Frontline. And we're really thrilled to have this incredible turnout tonight. I'm glad to see you've all made yourselves comfortable. As some of you know who have come to our exhibition openings in the past, we typically give guided tours throughout the exhibition galleries, but we have a really wonderful problem today, which is that there are too many of you to fit into our hallway display galleries at once. So we're going to provide an introduction right here in the Commons, and it'll take about 45 minutes to give you a heads up. All of the student curators are going to be speaking today. So I want to begin our reception with a really important acknowledgement, and that is that our exhibition, that the Cornell Costume and Textile Collection, and that Cornell University's Ithaca campus is located in the traditional homelands of the Gayogano or Cayuga Nation, one of the 6 Haudenosaunee nations. And acknowledging place is really critical. After all, we are all here together today to explore places of empowerment and the bodies that have carried messages of empowerment into various places through fashion. And while we interpret the frontline metaphorically, we also consider the real physical spaces where women are on the front line every single day, making change and using fashion to disrupt, to articulate, and to transform. And fashion, like place, is also critical. And as we'll show in this exhibition, the two go hand in hand. Fashion has unfortunately far too often been misunderstood and misrepresented as superficial. The garments and accessories in this exhibition show the very opposite, that fashion is a highly visible and forceful medium that commands attention and communicates possibilities. Feminism and fashion have the potential, therefore, to go hand in hand. And again, the pieces in this exhibit prove just that. Some of the garments in the exhibition were worn purposefully to make a statement, whether it's the pussy hats and political t-shirts of today or the Votes for Women sash from 1916. Each makes a visible statement about women's rights, and when worn by many women in large groups, convey solidarity and collective empowerment. Other fashions we've included today enabled women to be on the front line of change, like sports uniforms or power suits or other forms of functional yet fashionable apparel, like a stretchy trapeze outfit that you'll see today that was designed, constructed, and worn by Alia Serini, a really talented trapeze artist and performer. Other garments are included because they were worn while on the front line, like the mother-daughter section of our exhibition featuring Ann Richards and Cecile Richards. Cecile Richards wore the blue skirt suit you'll see today when she testified before Congress as president of Planned Parenthood in 2015. The suit skirt worn by her mother, Ann Richards, was worn during her inauguration as the 45th governor of Texas, and she had it manufactured locally in Dallas, Texas by Richards Brooks. And during Ann Richards' tenure, she appointed more women, people of color, and other underrepresented folks to state posts than any of her predecessors combined. Other garments show the wear and tear of being on the front line, like the worn-away soles of Representative-elect Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's campaign shoes, or the worn-away soles of one of the first Barnum and Bailey female circus clowns. And lastly, we have fashions that were worn while women did important work empowering and protecting others, like a World War II U.S. Naval Women's Reserve uniform worn by Major Kate Payne. She worked on degaussing efforts during the war and developed electromagnetic coils that were installed on naval ships in the Atlantic. Her degaussing work likely saved hundreds, if not thousands, of lives, because once installed, these electromagnetic coils would prevent naval ships from triggering German naval mines. There's a dance shawl made and worn by the Hakum, or the queen of the Hupachusett First Nation, who actively taught dancing and sewing to members of her community after the cultural genocide of residential schooling, which ended in her community in 1973. And of course, there's also the gown worn by our college co-founder, Martha Van Rensselaer, when she traveled to Belgium in 1924 to meet the king and queen and to be acknowledged for her efforts in rebuilding Belgian libraries after World War I. We also have on display for tonight only the medallions and medals that she was presented with, along with her partner and college co-founder, Flora Rose, from the King and Queen of Belgium. So I want to thank Anne Sauer from the Division of Rare and Manuscript Collections for bringing these out tonight to share with all of you. And in addition to these medals, you'll notice that we have a number of other pieces on display here in the Commons. One of the interesting challenges, curatorial challenges for us, is that our display space is very limited. So tonight we've included a lot of the pieces we wished we could have included in our show, but represent other women on the front line. We have the court gowns of Helen McGill White. She was the first woman in the United States to earn a PhD. We have in the back corner the 1937 inaugural gown worn by Eleanor Roosevelt. We also have nursing uniforms from the late 19th century through to World War I and all the way up through the 1960s. And we have representation from 5 branches of the military: Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, and Air Force. In addition, we have a yeomanette uniform from World War I, which was the first war in the United States where women served. And while I'm standing up here describing all of these items to you, I cannot take credit for this exhibition. I did come up with the title and the theme and got the support from the Cornell Council for the Arts, but the execution of the exhibition itself was the work of 14 students in my graduate course, Anthropology of the Fashion Body. And in a few minutes, they're going to take the stage to discuss their process and a handful of stories behind the pieces they selected and researched. But before we get to that, I want to acknowledge a few other individuals who have worked tirelessly to help make this exhibit possible. Brenda Marston, who's the curator of Cornell's Human Sexuality Collection, has been an invaluable resource to all of us from the start with such positive energy, creativity, and true excitement for our work. We have a number of items on loan from the Human Sexuality Collection. We're very grateful. And also Stephen Calco from the Kiel Center for Labor Management, Documentation, and Archives. Likewise, has been a tremendous support to all of us, digitizing many of the incredible images that you see of Coretta Scott King and loaning us the 1199 Union caps. A number of other curators have also really gone out of their way to support our exhibit. When we found out that we would not be allowed to borrow any items from Cornell's Linseth Women's Suffrage Collection, Patty Edmondson at the Western Reserve Historical Society bolted into action to help us represent this very important part of feminist fashion history and loaned us the incredible 1916 suffrage outfit that you see in the case. I want to also thank Phil Pritchard. Some of you may know him as the keeper of the Stanley Cup. He's the curator at the Hockey Hall of Fame and loaned us the Cornell jerseys as well as the gear from that period. And Annette Becker from the Texas Fashion Collection for loaning us Governor Richard's inaugural suit. And then, of course, there's all of the individuals who loaned us items. Cecile Richards, Representative-elect Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Representative Catherine Clark, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Susan and Mark Kaiser, circus performers Joy Powers and Elia Serini, Tracy and Jolene Watts from the Hoopachusett First Nation, Dr. Yolanda Saunders, Julie McGinnis, Janine De Lorenzo, Bianca Dominguez, who's here with us tonight, Rachel Powell, Reggie Baker, Louise Dara, Dorothy Schaefer-Foe, Giselle Begler, and Penny Mapes. We also will be hearing from Penny a little bit later, and we're hoping as well Terry Svetan, who's on her way from Rochester. There are 2 women that are featured in this exhibit. We're also very grateful today to have Nan Kinney with us in the audience, who also appears in our exhibition and helped to found the first United States lesbian erotic magazine on our backs, as well was a co-founder of Fatale Video, which produced adult entertainment films by and for women. We are supported here in the Cornell Costume and Textile Collection by many generous donors, as well as our Department of Fiber Science and Apparel Design, the College of Human Ecology, and especially we want to thank our college facilities team, our digital design and fabrication studio. A big thank you to Amy Meckler, our Dean of Communications. She gave us so much advice and support while she was on vacation and all of the news broke about our exhibit, so thank you so much, Amy. All of the staff in our main office, and especially our collection manager, Helen McLallen, who puts up with all of our wild ideas and helps make them happen. The exhibit is funded in part by the Cornell Council for the Arts, and it's part of the CCA Biennial. The theme of the biennial is duration, passage, persistence, and survival. Our exhibition embodies, literally embodies this theme by showing how women have persistently used fashion to empower and uplift themselves and others. And so before we begin our program and before I introduce the student curators, I'd like to call to the stage Sophie Wang and Marley Weil. Both Sophie and Marley are sophomores in fashion design and management, and they're really, in many ways, bright lights of the future. They recently started a student organization called CUF, Cornell University Fashion Forward, and they're going to share a little bit about that organization, what they're doing, as an example of a student organization right here on campus in our department that's working to empower and uplift women in the local area.
Thank you so much, Professor Green, for your kind introduction. My name is Marley Weil.
My name is Sophie Wang.
We felt as Cornell fashion students that it is both our passion and responsibility to help fellow women around us.
As a result, we founded CUF, a student-run organization that utilizes fashion to help women and children. For example, tomorrow we are visiting So Green to talk to their teen sewing class about how they can turn their hobby of sewing into a career in fashion.
Furthermore, we are excited about forming partnerships with additional organizations that help women enter the workforce.
This experience has been extremely rewarding for us.
Fashion has given us the empowerment to be active women within our communities, and we are grateful to give that back.
Thank you.
So lots of exciting things to come from Cornell University Fashion Forward. And so without further ado, I'd like to begin introducing our student curators, starting off with Jenny Lee Dupuy, who is going to speak with you about the overall curatorial vision. Join me in welcoming Jenny Lee.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jenny Lee Dupuy, and I am a PhD student in fiber science and apparel design. This is my first year. On the first day of Dr. Green's Anthropology of the Fashioned Body class, we divided into teams with which to work on this exhibit. As a member of the curatorial team, I'll be speaking to the overall curatorial vision and exhibit organization. We began with a question: how do clothes empower? According to the Oxford English Dictionary, empowerment is the process of becoming stronger and more confident, especially in controlling one's life and claiming one's rights. In seeking to define our interpretation of empowerment, we turn to different aspects of power, having agency, choice, and a voice. We asked, how do we embody and perform power? Do we wield it like a weapon or a hockey stick? How do we harness it? Do we use it as an inner reserve with which to amplify our voices? Or do we wear it on our skin like a costume or a signal or a symbol of strength? If the body is a place where we harness, store, perform, and wield our sources of empowerment, is it not also a space where we negotiate our ideas and identities? Because fashion marks the boundary between the body and the social world, the fashioned body is the front line. Clothing allows us to extend our bodies beyond that which is reached by our skin. The front line is also a physical space. There's a front line in every field, in every profession, and in every walk of life. The front line is defined both individually and collectively, and therefore we've chosen to focus on public, physical spaces where women use fashion to empower and uplift. This exhibition is the culmination of collective ideation and concept development between 14 students, 1 professor, and numerous people who have helped us along the way. From meetings to emails, photo shoots to archives, connecting with women across North America and ending up on the media front lines, Women-Empowered Fashions from the Front Line is a visual representation of fashion's potential in creating change. Please take an exhibit guide, yours to keep, to read about the women in fashions we've featured. Now, looking back, perhaps we would revise our original question, how do clothes empower? And instead turn to what we've learned from the amazing women featured in this exhibit, and ask instead, how can we use clothes to empower others? Thank you very much. It is my privilege to introduce Rachel Getman, who will be speaking about graphics, logistics, and the press.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. So they say that well-behaved women seldom make history. And I've heard that Eleanor Roosevelt said this, I heard that Marilyn Monroe said this, and maybe they have, but it was Pulitzer Prize winning historian Laurel Thatcher Ulrich, a name that you might not know, who originally coined the phrase. But regardless of who said it first or what bumper sticker you might have seen it on, after installing this exhibit, our class intimately understands this familiar aphorism. My name is Rachel Getman. I'm a master's student in apparel design, and as a member of graphics and logistics, I can speak to our entrance into the front line. I've seen the evolution of ideas to implementation, and the backlash that we've encountered. We've received a tremendous amount of press and support that I don't really think any of us imagined. And this goes from coverage on popular press and media news outlets to an interview in Teen Vogue, which I think fulfilled a lot of our childhood dreams. It fulfilled mine. And we were mentioned in over 40 publications, which was really exciting and affirming to our work. And even a 4-person panel on Fox Primetime News surprisingly agreed, that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's shoes should be included in our exhibit. From the planning to the press, together we experienced a full immersion in facing resistance for what we believe and what we wish to represent. So we are on the front line. Our decision to showcase the power and positive impact of dress has been celebrated and criticized. This exhibit is a testament to the ambiguity of the front line. It's not always clear when you're on it. It's rarely a choice or a decision, but it's a series of moments that together propel you into a new space. Together, we recognize the transformative power of dress of women from the past to the present. So I want to thank you all for being here today and supporting our exhibit, and I would especially like to acknowledge the women who have come before us and have paved the way for us to be, for our privilege to even be recognized as citizens, to even be recognized as students, and to be recognized as women. And I'd also like to acknowledge the women, fashionable women worldwide, visible and otherwise, who are currently fighting on the front lines. So we hope that you enjoy our exhibit today, and thank you for being here. So I'm now honored to present Chris Hesselbein, a graduate student in Science and Technology Studies. He's a member of the curatorial team, and he will speak to the curatorial process of putting together this exhibit.
Good evening, everyone. As you've just heard, I'm Chris Hesselbein, and I'd like to thank you again for being here tonight. We're all very proud of what we've achieved, and so it's a pleasure to share this moment with you. I tend to be blunt when I speak. Some of you will know this, so I'll cut right to the chase. As you've just heard from Jenny Lee, clothing can be a source of empowerment for women on the front line, wherever and whenever that might be. As you've just heard from Rachel, though, the mere act of describing the relationship between clothing and empowerment, for example, by organizing an exhibit as this, can result in public attack and ridicule. There are two things I'd like to very briefly highlight for you tonight. Both of my points are not very upbeat, but they are nonetheless important to mention, especially on a night like this. The first point is nothing new at all. Women continue to be judged by their looks and all too often reduced to their appearances alone. Things have changed for sure, and this exhibit is an evidence of that change, but many of the people featured in this exhibition, as well as the criticism they receive every day, make clear to us that clothing and empowerment are not straightforward. What you wear can be used against you to disempower you, no matter what your intentions were when you were getting dressed. My second point might be less obvious and therefore may be harder to accept. Although tonight is a celebration of a collective and ongoing achievement, we also have to remember that we have struggled and to some extent even failed. I'm not here referring to the challenges of archival research. You'll hear a lot more about this soon. Nor am I referring to financial constraints or issues of institutional collaboration. Rather, when you walk past these display cases, remind yourself that even we who have more time, money, and energy than most in this world, this is an Ivy League institution after all, that we have not really succeeded in making visible those who still remain invisible. For example, the mothers, sisters, friends, and strangers whose work, both physical and emotional, too often continues to go by unrecognized and unrewarded. There is cause for celebration tonight, but we should also remain mindful of how we, all of us, despite our intentions and efforts, can inadvertently perpetuate and even obscure some of the issues we'd like to change. One of these challenges in the context of this exhibition is the process of doing research. Next, we have Mary-Louise Dubose, who's going to introduce us to the research that went on in this exhibition. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mary-Louise Dubose, and I am a senior fashion design major, and I'm going to begin by introducing the cases themselves. So aiming to showcase the women who demonstrated their power by raising their voices and hitting the pavements, our first case is The Street. Composed of garments and accessories from various marches, rallies, and organized demonstrations, each piece in this case tells the tale of women's struggle to be heard. The case starts with garments representing the women's suffrage movement. Fighting to secure women the right to vote, the movement was one of the largest early demonstrations organized by women for the rights of women. During this movement, women fought tirelessly, organizing marches, picketing, pamphleting, all fighting to secure women the right to vote. One of the first major gatherings for said movement was in Seneca, New York in 1848, during which the delegates stated, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men and women are created equal." Their goal was gender equality, and the first step was securing the right to vote. After decades of fighting, on August 26, 1920, the 19th Amendment was ratified, stating that women deserve all the citizenship rights and responsibilities given to men. 3 months later, 8 million women across the United States voted for the first time. Showcasing this movement, we have suffragette apparel worn by Olivia Langdon Clemens and an ensemble constructed from garments of unknown suffragettes. Clemens' velvet gown embroidered with pansies showcases the colors of the suffragette movement in a subtle way. The ensemble illustrates what an empowered woman of the 19-teens would have looked like when on the streets themselves. While these outfits are very different, they both demonstrate the way women fought for what they believed in and made a difference directly through their clothing. I'd like to introduce Akua shoot, I'm sorry, who will speak further about the street.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Akua Kwakwa, a junior fashion design management major, and I'll be talking about the hats which make up Look D in the exhibition. Mary Moultrie was a woman from Charleston, South Carolina, who, after beginning work at the Medical College Hospital in her birthplace, saw that African American hospital workers weren't being treated fairly. She put together a union which went on strike in 1969 and was elected the founding president of the local 1199B of the Hospital and Healthcare Workers Union. During the 100-day strike, which eventually resulted in a pay raise, Ms. Coretta Scott King paid a visit to Charleston and gave a speech to hospital workers, saying, and I quote, "Hospital workers have been working full-time jobs at part-time pay. After all, $1.30 an hour is not a wage, it is an insult. Many of the hospital workers throughout our nation are women, Black women, many of whom are the main supporters of their families. I feel that the Black woman in our nation, the Black woman, is perhaps the most discriminated against of all the working women." The hats that make up Look D in the exhibit were hats worn during the strike all those years ago. These hats are important because to me, they show the power of the everyday woman who sees something and decides to speak up about it. It is so easy, these days especially, to be crushed by cynicism and complacency with how terrible everything feels like it is. But despite what people may think, one person can make a difference. I'm honored to have been part of an exhibition like this because it's a way to show people what I feel like I've known all along, that clothes aren't just pieces of fabric that we own and wear and wake up and put on our bodies. Fashion can speak, and fashion can breathe, and fashion can hold the energies and memories of those around us and before us. I hope that when people see this exhibition, they can take a closer look at their wardrobes and give more credit to the clothes that they love. Next, we have Jessica Guadalupe Estrada, a second-year master's student, to talk about the transition from the street to the government. Thank you.
Soy Jessica Guadalupe Estrada. Es un placer estar aquí. Es muy importante reconocer el poder de toda mujer. No importa su color de piel, su origen, su ocupación, su edad o su figura. No subestimen a la mujer. La mujer no es poderosa solamente por ser famosa o rica. Todos y todas estamos rodeados de mujeres que han impactado nuestras vidas y ellas también son poderosas. Diversity is essential to showcasing the empowerment of all women. It is my privilege today to speak to you about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her shoes. As a Mexican-American first-generation Latina, seeing another young Latina working with such determination to achieve her goal is empowering, because we are very often told that those goals are out of our reach. We didn't display her shoes because of her victory. We displayed her shoes and contacted her prior to November 6th because she embodied empowerment to more than just women, to others as well. These shoes represent more than a win. We take shoes for granted. We really don't think about shoes when we put them on. And that's similar in ways in which women can be underestimated or overlooked. Just as shoes are a fundamental part of our everyday lives, so are the women that contribute to society. In this exhibit, these shoes represent a walk of life for women. Y a todas las mujeres las dejo con esto. Lucha por ti, lucha por ella y lucha por todas. Gracias. I'd like to introduce Kate Greeter, who will speak further about the government. Thank you.
Bear with me. Hi, I'm Kate Greeter, a PhD student, also in fiber science and apparel design, and I'm going to be speaking briefly about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. In 1965, the Supreme Court enacted the Voting Rights Law. The law, intended to address deeply entrenched racial discrimination in the United States democratic electoral process, was again brought before the Supreme Court in 2012 and 2013. When the court ruled to overturn the Voting Rights Act, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg wore one of her signature dissent collars to indicate her objection to the ruling. In her dissenting opinion, Ginsburg wrote that throwing out parts of the Voting Rights Act when it has worked to stem the rampant racial bias plaguing the American electorate is like, quote, throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you are not getting wet. Her ability to translate common sense into the law remains unparalleled. Today, as the framework of the Supreme Court in the United States American judicial system is seemingly under a magnifying glass, we are reminded that partisan politics aside, Ruth Bader Ginsburg has dedicated her entire career to upholding our right to equality under the Constitution. While this is an exhibition about women empowered, when I say our right to equality, that refers to everyone in this room. In writing about Ruth Bader Ginsburg for this exhibition, we as a class had a debate. Do we focus attention on the fact that she is a mother, wife, widow, who despite having cancer twice, heart surgery, and more recently, several broken ribs, has never missed a day on the bench? Or do we instead focus on her remarkable legal career as an appellate judge, lawyer, professor, and justice of the Supreme Court? And do we leave her personal life out of it? After all, we often don't feel the need to qualify a man's success by pointing out his more domestic roles or private obstacles. But we chose to present Justice Ginsburg as a person, a rather extraordinary person and Cornell graduate, because as she herself famously said, women will have achieved true equality when men share with them the responsibility of bringing up the next generation. Her legislative wins are even more meaningful when they are situated in context, when we move away from the hallowed halls of the Supreme Court and look at the way equality under the law transforms the home, the workplace, the university, the community, and the way that it affects each and every one of us. And our next speaker is Tori Peach, who will be taking us from the government to the stage.
everyone. My name is Tori Peach, and I'm a senior fashion design management major. Today, I'll be speaking about the stage, one of the 6 key dynamic spaces we've chosen to highlight in Women Empowered. When the curatorial team first decided to focus on the stage, my automatic thoughts were of pop culture celebrities, singers, actresses, and prominent performers of that nature, the ones we know and follow on Instagram. So, when Jenny Lee, one of our curators, suggested including garments from the circus, I was a little surprised to hear of its incorporation. It turned out Jenny Lee, who I'd only just met at the time, has an extensive professional background as a circus and theatrical costume designer and technician. While circus stages held specific personal significance for Jenny Lee, I never guessed the significance they'd come to hold for me as well. While the mainstream performers I'd initially thought of no doubt break a new glass ceiling each day, I've come to develop a deep appreciation for the circus through the classmates that surrounded me and through the garments that brought women's stories to life. Aaliyah Serini, a trapeze performance artist, created a costume to commemorate a friend who'd passed away from an accident during her own performance. Julie McKinnis' headpiece stands as a testament to the life she dedicated to leading other female musicians and performers in following their own passions. Janine Di Lorenzo's necklace, made by a fellow performer in Cirque du Soleil, has stayed with her for many years, always a reminder of the strength she had during her performances. Joy Power's clown shoes, from her time touring with the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey, surprising in their normalcy, illustrate the tireless work that comes from bringing joy to others and from becoming a leader in a male-dominated field. The significance of circus costume and its role in female empowerment became most alive for me, however, through a conversation with Nicole Muse. Her vivid rainbow ensemble is one we borrowed for this exhibition, and it's one that refuses to be overlooked. If you'll see it, you'll know what I mean. Nicole told me all about the outfit, designed by our own Jenny Lee, and how its mind of its own personality taught her so much about her own. She told me how she could discover new aspects of herself through the clothing she put on and the interactions it produced, as if out of thin air. Through my conversation with Muse, and through my work with an incredible team of empowered women, and one man, coming together to celebrate other empowered women, I reinforced a very important lesson. Women have power. So do their clothes. I learned, for real, that empowerment comes from all spaces. The stage belongs to those who take it. And, without personally attending a circus performance, this dynamic stage is louder for me now than it's ever been. Through this exhibition, the circus has brought joy, laughter, power, fearlessness, and endless inspiration into my life. I hope today you'll see how it can do the same for yours. Now, I'd like to introduce Fabiana Berenger-Gill, who will speak about Sylvia Goldstaub.
Good evening. My name is Fabiana Berenger-Gill, and I'm a 5th-year architecture student here at Cornell University. I had the privilege of researching an outfit designed and worn by a woman named Sylvia Goldstaub. In 1977, Sylvia's son Mark came out to her as gay. She was initially not accepting of his identity, but after some time began researching on her own to learn more about what it meant to be a gay man. Sylvia Goldstaub quickly came about to re-embrace her son and all aspects of his identity. 11 years later, Mark passed away of an AIDS-related illness. From that point onward, Sylvia became a public advocate for people living with AIDS, in addition to the LGBTQ community. She published a book called Unconditional Love, Mom, Dad, Love Me Please, which addresses the importance of a parent's acceptance of their child, no matter their identity. Using her own resources, she went on a book tour across the country to spread her ideas, and the outfit we have on display is what she wore during her tour. She decorated her all-white ensemble herself, sewing red ribbons, the symbol for AIDS, across her shirt and pants. After witnessing her son's friends suffer through AIDS while being exiled from their families and pass away from AIDS-related illnesses alone, Sylvia's goal was to prevent this from happening in the future. Unfortunately, while attempting to reach Sylvia in order to invite her to this event, we found out that she had passed away, sadly alone, in a nursing home in Binghamton. We hope to honor her with the display of her powerful attire and keep her memory as a frontline fighter alive. A touching symbol of the energy she put out in the world is her signature in the copy of the book we acquired by luck, which reads, "Thank you for making a difference. Blessing, peace, love, Sylvia Goldstaub." I'd now like to invite Linda Zeppeleas to the podium to speak about Dorothy Schaefer-Foe.
Hello, everyone. As Fabi said, my name is Linda Zeppeleas, and I am a first-year PhD student here in apparel design. As a member of the research team, I was tasked with identifying objects to include in the exhibition. After countless hours of scanning items housed within several archives on and off campus, I discovered many wonderful examples of women who have used fashion as a means of empowerment and uplift. Today, I would like to talk about one woman in particular who I have come to deeply admire and respect. This woman is the fashion editor and best-selling author, Dorothy Schaefer-Foe. Fashion magazines are often perceived as aestheticizing social and cultural issues. Foe's contributions to the pages of Vogue and Mirabella in the 80s and 90s illustrates their role as a potent source for empowerment and uplift. When women began to enter the workforce in the 70s, they had no visual reference for what to wear in the workplace. In the 50s, women were primarily homemakers. In the 60s, they were rebels. Working women were thus left with little to no choice but to emulate men. They adopted black skirt suits, white shirts, and black bows as ties. Foe's job as the women's image director of Vogue in the 80s led her to pull together images that spoke to working women. Her personal style and progressive thinking offered Vogue's readership the ability to fashion themselves for work in ways that helped them make points, not strike points against them. In 1989, Foe left the magazine to help launch Mirabella, a new kind of style magazine for the postmodern woman that ran from June 1989 to April 2000. As an executive editor, Foe continued to offer working women ideas about how to build a smart and functional wardrobe. Reflecting on her career, Foe wrote, quote, "I decided the best way to empower women's lives was to change what they read and what they wore," end quote. On display is a suit designed by Yves Saint Laurent and worn by Foe during her tenure at both Vogue and Mirabella. This ensemble is a perfect example of power dressing, a fashion that redefined the men's suit for women in the late 1980s. Yves Saint Laurent was instrumental in developing this style. His use of shoulder pads, exaggerated lapels, oversized buttons, and big pockets changed the way women looked in the workplace. Laurent gave them a shape, a style, and a silhouette of power, and Foe conveyed these sensibilities in the pages of Vogue and Mirabella in ways that truly spoke to working women. Next, I would like to invite Sion Brown up to the stage to talk about another Cornell alum who has used fashion as a means of empowerment. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sion Brown. I'm a first-year master's student in apparel design, and I would like to mention a key piece in our exhibit, which is the white dress 030113. Designed by Cornell alumna Rachel Powell, the white dress represents a portion of Powell's story. She describes as a loss of innocence. The numbers embroidered on the bodice of the dress represent the date that she was raped. The topic of domestic violence, rape, and sexual assault are often topics that are overlooked in American society. However, in the Women Empowered exhibition, it has been a very important topic that has not been overlooked. Women unjustly face a great deal of pressure to conform to standards in order to feel safe and equal in a world that has been dominated by their counterparts. Amidst all of the press and alarming amounts of stories coming forth about sexual assault, rape, and the position of the Me Too movement, I personally would like to commend Ms. Rachel Powell for the strength to be able to tell her story through clothing. Powell, being an African-American apparel designer, is speaking up to represent and tell the stories of women that are often overlooked. Ms. Rachel Powell, thank you for giving women a voice through clothing and empowering them by bringing light to issues that women face every day. Our hope is that through this exhibition, that women's stories can be seen through fashion and can contribute to bring about social justice. And I'd like to introduce Margot Naborak, who will speak about Deborah Sundal.
Hi everyone, I'm Margot Naborak, a senior in human ecology majoring in apparel design.
For those of you who know me, I'm probably one of the more reserved people you will ever meet at Cornell. So I think I took this on as a challenge to expand my comfort zone. I will try not to blush too much as I introduce our very next empowered woman, Deborah Sundal. Sundal used the stage to increase visibility of lesbian women's sexuality and to advocate for sex positivity. Her stage name was Fanny Fatale, and she wore these garments in the 1980s in her lesbian striptease performances at a San Francisco burlesque theater. Her items exhibited here were donated by Susie Bright, the editor of the first women's erotica magazine called On Our Backs. The magazine launched in 1984 with the help of Nan Kinney, Honey Lee Cottrell, and Deborah Sundal. Sundal continued to be involved with the magazine for 10 years. Then, in 1984, Sundal and Kinney co-founded a video production company called Fatale, specializing in lesbian erotica. For the past 25 years, Sundal has worked internationally as sex educator, teaching women and couples about rarely discussed sex topics. In 1993, Sundal also created the first ever video about how to female ejaculate. Then, in 2003, she wrote the first book on that subject and the G-spot, and updated the book in 2014. Consequently, Deborah Sundal continues to be recognized as a leading international expert and pioneer in female sexuality. Next, we are going to move from the stage to women under another spotlight in academia, which will be introduced by Cindy Kaur-Oba. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cindy Cordova. I'm a PhD student in my second year in apparel design. I'm honored to be part of this exhibition. It has demonstrated for me how everyone can put together different skills towards a collective work that can inspire a discussion in women empowerment. This experience made me reflect on the meaning of empowerment as a self-driving practice led by a sense of purpose and awareness of the greater impact of leading by example. I feel particularly connected with Yolanda Sanders' knitting dress, inspired in Josephine Baker's and Art Deco, as a final project for her master's thesis at Colorado State University. Dr. Sanders was appointed in July 2017 as a head department of apparel, events, and hospitality management at Iowa State University. She was the first Black female appointed as a head department of this institution. Her research focused on theoretical design solutions for apparel design and wearable art. She also addresses the social and psychological aspects of African American appearances. As an African descendant from Colombia, we are few asked in leadership positions. Therefore, the academic work of Yolanda Sanders, through her forefront research in apparel design, her support towards faculty and students is building a legacy and opening spaces for future generations. Next up is Jane Leiva, who will tell us about Susan Watkins and the bull-shelled uniform.
Good evening. My name is Jane Leiva, and I'm a master's student in apparel design. The arena case on display highlights athletic achievements and embodies messages of empowerment spanning decades. A pioneer and arguably the founder of the field functional apparel design, the research work and contributions made by Professor Susan Watkins continues to advance the human condition. From lecture halls to boardrooms, Susan is a woman of leadership on the front lines and challenged the design status quo throughout her career. When called by the United States Olympic bobsled team and asked to address the needs of injuries inflicted upon an Olympic bobsledder, Susan and her students of Cornell rose to the challenge. They redesigned a uniform that would provide mobility and burn protection while retaining thermality. Under the guidance and advisement of Professor Watkins, her students worked through the design challenge and submitted their pattern designs to the Olympic head coach. The uniform displayed in the exhibit is the final iteration designed by Professor Watkins' students of 1997. Susan has published 3 books, most recently the co-author of Functional Clothing Design, From Sportswear to Spacesuits. The work and impact of Susan has had on the field of functional apparel design enables and improves our human condition, while empowering and shaping the world and space we explore and live in. I'd like to welcome Dr. Green back to the podium, and she will introduce our special guests.
So yes, let's take a moment to give a big round of applause for all of our student curators. They've done an excellent job. So I'm not sure if Terry made it from Rochester. No, she didn't make it. So our special guest this evening, I'd like to call Penny Mapes forward. And she is, it's really an honor and privilege to introduce Penny. She's one of the several female athletes who are featured in this exhibition, and as a member of Cornell women's ice hockey team in the early 1970s, Mapes experienced firsthand the importance of fashioning one's body for the front line. And so she was one of the women who started the Cornell women's ice hockey team. Welcome, Penny.
Thank you. Find my notes here. As a freshman at Cornell in 1971-72, the first season that the women had, a team, I loved hockey. The founder of the team, Reggie Baker, put up posters all over campus. And my roommates knew that I loved hockey, so they stole one of the posters and brought it to me and told me I must join. So I had no equipment, I had no skates, I'd never played a sport or really never been on a team, and I couldn't skate. But that wasn't one of the requirements. We got a team together, enough players for 4 lines and 3 defense lines. We had to buy all our equipment. I bought my skates and shin guards, and we skated in sweatpants instead of hockey pants, which it hurt more when you fell, I'll tell you. And we bought our own jerseys. And the jersey on display, number 8, was my jersey. It's actually, all the jerseys the first year were boys' football jerseys because they were cheap. I loved practices. I loved getting in shape. It felt really good. Even running Sholkoff, the crescent, up all those steps and back down. We did it 4 times one day. It was good. It was good. I didn't play many years. I didn't have my photograph in line of rink until recently. They have our old team photo hanging. None of us went to the Olympics, but I still love the sport. I love returning to watch the team play today. They are amazing. And the several players from Cornell that have been on both the U.S. and the Canadian Olympic teams are just, it's wonderful. It's great. I'm so proud of their accomplishments today, and I'm very pleased at how women's hockey has spread, has grown, and also in the world as well as in the U.S. Thank you.
All right, so our final speaker tonight came as a wonderful surprise to my class. We spent the entire semester reading a book called Fashion and Cultural Studies by Dr. Susan Kaiser, who's at the University of California at Davis. She and her husband Mark also loaned us the Texas flag that's signed by Ann Richards, which is also in the exhibition. And the two of them surprised us by flying from California yesterday to be here and to support us in the exhibition. Dr. Kaiser is a scholar that we all admire tremendously, and so she is going to give the final remarks. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Susan Kaiser.
Thank you so much, Denise, for those generous remarks, and thank you to the class. I'm just so overwhelmed, so exciting to be here. I was hearing some of the backstories about this exhibit, and then we loaned the flag, and my husband said, we should go. And it worked out beautifully because our quarter ended on Tuesday, flew out yesterday, and my class was really excited that I'm coming. I was explaining what it was about, and they said, we know all about it, social media, it's everywhere. So they want pictures, and I'm taking a lot of them. I can't say enough about the remarkable depth and breadth of this exhibit. It's inspiring, it's provocative, it's brilliant, it's cool. It's really powerful in so many ways and really represents being on the front line of path-breaking research in fashion studies. I think it's both a tribute to the women who are featured, and it's a tribute to all of those who worked so hard on this exhibit, Denise and her class, the anthropology of the fashion body. I think this exhibit and the students and their backstories and debates that they shared are extremely touching. There's so many stories. This is a remarkable catalog. I read it last night, and I think it could be a book. There are so many wonderful stories in here, and I just want to say really briefly that the tribute that this represents to the women, one of the things that are the remarkable women who are included, it crosses time and place from the suffragettes to the present. It's intergenerational, even in the present, from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It represents diverse ethnicities, diverse religions, diverse sexualities, and diverse social classes, as well as diverse ages. It represents women who have transformed our ability to vote, to represent, to legislate, to theorize, to lead, to perform, to speak, to dissent, and of course, to dress. And one more thing I want to say about this exhibit is the contribution it makes to scholarship in fashion studies. Curation is just a vital, critical method in the field. And as you can tell from all the stories that we heard from the students, it represents archival work, interviews, the design of the exhibition, which included not only the wonderful displays that we see, but the graphic design, the layout design, the reading and the theorizing that's gone into this process, the writing, the catalog, the speeches, the text that accompanies the objects. So it's work on the front line, and it's at the forefront of critical fashion studies. So please join me in thanking and congratulating Professor Green and her class.